All right, guys, this is Colby Black with Reviewus. I have a very special guest here, someone I'm really excited to have on. That is Allison Bapp Phillips. She is someone I've talked to in the past and is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm very excited about having her here. How are you doing today, Allison?
I am doing fabulous, thank you.
The main reason I wanted to talk to everybody here is I wanted to get some people motivated into selling. We're kind of split. We have some guys that are getting out there and doing really, really well, and we have some guys who just haven't quite gone out there. They seem to be doing a lot of prep work. They are wanting to constantly prepare for tomorrow and not really get out there and start selling today. And I want to talk to Allison and talk to you guys about some reasons it's important to get out there and start making sales, especially if you're wanting to do these walk-ins. It's really important to get out there and actually start um, talking to these businesses and walking in there. So the message of today is one, to get motivated and get out there and start selling, and number two, I'm going to share with you a personal strategy that I have that will allow you to have some confidence to get to that decision maker and at least start the sales process. One of the biggest obstacles that a lot of people are having is you walk into a business and you're confronted with that front, sales desk or that front desk clerk, and you can't even get in touch with the decision maker, and so you're intimidated and you're not going out there making sales. So I'm going to show you something that's had a really successful close ratio for me after I've got to these business decision makers, and I want to share that with you, and then we're going to go over a couple sales strategies that I love that Allison has. So the first thing that I want to talk about and I want to ask Allison is, what do you think prevents most sales agents who are doing walk-ins from going out there and actually making the sales? Is it fear? Is it intimidation? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's probably both fear and intimidation. It's interesting whenever I teach a business owner sales strategies, they also go into, I call it planning to plan mode.
Yeah.
I was planning to plan, but never actually executing anything. And the truth is, you get better and better at sales when you just get out there and do it. Even if the first time you do it, you royally screw it up, then the next time you're not so afraid anymore because you already did it once, right? So you go out and you correct whatever, course correct, do whatever you want to do, and then go back out there and do it again. So the fear is I'll mess it up. So I have to stay home and practice by myself. But you really never are practicing unless you're out there talking to people. That's the real practice. And
Absolutely.
that's what gets you to sales way faster than if you just sit behind your computer or, listening to stuff trying to figure it out.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. You can sing in the shower all day long and you can be very comfortable. It's a lot different when you go out on stage. And so you got to get comfortable with that stage. You got to get comfortable inside of the other person's establishment. I know that even for me today, sometimes when you go and you pull out in front of a parking lot and you see all these businesses, there's always going to be that little bit of intimidation factor where you pull up and you realize I'm walking into their house. It's a little bit different when you're sending email blasts from your home and stuff like that. So when you're doing these local sales, you're going to have that intimidation factor that you're going into their business. But there are some strategies and some things that you can do to get you more comfortable with that, whether it's experience, having a set game plan, knowing your product, and just going out there and repeatedly doing it so that you do become comfortable with that being uncomfortable. It's comfortableness with being uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
One
So
other thing I wanted to add is that I think what happens because it's always a mental thing, right? And I think what happens mentally is people say, I'm going in there to pitch my thing, and now I'm risking getting turned down, or I'm risking getting rejected, or I'm risking hearing a no. And one of the things you could replace that's just a thought, right? It's like, it's just a thought that you're having. It's not reality. And I think the thing to shift in your brain is, I'm going in there to help this business owner become even more successful with this tool that is amazing, and I believe in it, and I know that it's going to help this business owner out really, really well. So that's my agenda for going in there, is to help somebody create even more success in their businesses and in their lives, rather than, oh, I'm going in there to interrupt people. I'm going in there to, risk rejection. Just switch the thought you're having in your head, because it's the thought that's stopping you from moving forward. And when you switch that thought in your mind, like, my role is to help people be successful, and in return I become successful through the sales that I'm making. And if you shift that game in your head, you go in with a lot more confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And you know, that's actually happened for me. I think the last conversation that we've had, I picked up on a really cool thing that you said, where you were going in there and you were never really trying to pitch anything. You were going in there and you were talking about a problem that existed and getting them to talk about that problem, where you almost had them asking you for the pitch. And the key is that you're doing these guys a service. You're not going out there being a bothersome problem to them. You're not going in there and being a headache to them. You're going out there to really do something good for them. And if you have that confidence and you know that you're going in there to actually improve the business, you shouldn't be scared about going in there to do it at all. I had a question that I want to ask you specifically is, do you think that sales is right for everyone? Is it something that you're born with, or is it something that you can be taught?
I definitely think it's something that can be taught, because just about every business owner I work with, it's rare that somebody comes to me and says, I love sales. They're running a business, but they really don't like the sales part of what they do. They just want to do what they do because they love it, but they're not really, people who come to me saying, I love sales and I just want to tweak it and make it better. It's usually people who go, I hate that whole sales thing. I just want to get money in my pocket, but I don't want to go through the painful sales process. So I definitely think it can be taught. And what I have learned with almost every single business owner is that it is 98% a mindset thing. And I think when you shift what's going on in your head around sales, for most people, it's not that they hate sales, they hate what they think sales is supposed to be. And if you shift what sales is supposed to be in your head, then you don't hate it so much anymore. Everybody that has gone through my integrity-based sales training, they're always coming out going, oh, this doesn't feel like sales. It just feels like I'm talking to people trying to help them out. And it's a huge shift. And most of the fear and the fear of rejection, fear of all that stuff, all the fears that go on, is your perception of what you think sales is supposed to be. And when you let go of that perception, you become comfortable with sales, because it doesn't feel like sales is a thing to conquer. It's really, I'm just going in there to have a conversation and to see if I can help this person out. It really becomes that simple when you shift it in your head. So yes, definitely can be learned.
So yeah, so it's not a win or a lose, it's a conversation. And I think everybody is pretty comfortable with some level of conversation. You can't really get through a day without a conversation. And if you go in there with that mindset that you're just going to have a conversation, you're going to find out if this person is a good fit, if they're going to be a good fit for you and you're going to be a good fit for them. And you go in there with that, you kind of can relieve some of that anxiety of whether or not you're going in there to close the deal. You're first going in there to have a conversation, and I totally love that and agree with it, because it does relieve a lot of anxiety when you go and realize that you're just going in there to have a conversation first. The
Absolutely. And I think it's that attachment to the outcome that creates a lot of the fear. What I mean by that is that if you're going in to talk to a business owner and you're like, oh my God, I hope I get the sale, I hope I get the sale, I hope they buy, I hope they don't reject me, I hope they don't say no, and all this negative chatter is going on in your head, you're way too attached to the outcome. So instead of being attached to the possibility of a sale, you just go in there going, okay, so I have this cool tool that actually could potentially help this business owner out quite a bit. So let me go see if what I have is a match for their needs. You're just going to go see. You're just going to explore. That's it. If it is a match, they'll buy. But if you go in with, oh, I got to make this sale, I got to make this sale, you psych yourself out. So you just go in saying, I'm just going to go see if what I have, I'm going to do a really great job sharing with them the power and the value of what I have, and let them see if this would be the right fit for them. That's really all you're doing.
And what's cool about our tool is, and I've said this before, is that we have the unique opportunity to already know the answer a lot of times of whether or not this will be good for them. In a lot of other sales uh, jobs that you may have, you may not really know if it's going to be a good fit for them. You don't know what they already have and stuff like that. But this is the one where you can look them up online and ahead of time see that they have negative reviews, ahead of time see that they have no online presence, ahead of time see all these key factors that show that they are going to benefit from using you. And so when you can target these businesses, that again should relieve a lot of anxiety because you know going in there that that conversation you are going to have is going to be something that they're most likely going to want to hear. And it's usually going to turn out pretty good for you, even if you get a no, even if maybe you find out that they're already trying something with someone else or something like that. You're still going to have a fairly good conversation, and you're not going to get a lot of rejection. So we've covered that it's not something that you need to necessarily be born with, although some people, some natural speaking ability may have some benefits there, but it is something that can be taught. What are some things that you think that a sales agent can do to increase their ability to sell, whether it's classes they took or books suggest reading, classes that you take? Is there anything out there that you think that for the person who's really interested in improving in sales that they can do to improve their ability to sell?
Um, that's a really interesting question because a lot of what I was taught in sales I disagree with, and a lot of the books on all that stuff on sales and selling, I tend to go counter to that because I believe that sales is a human experience. And I believe that the people I'm talking to aren't targets or prospects or, all these different things. I see them as truly as a human being, and I'm here to be of service to them. Not a lot of whole lot of books and sales books kind of come from that place. I'm not going in there with the intent to close the person.
Mhm.
I really am trying to see if what I have could enhance their lives and their businesses in some way. And there's not a lot of books that come from that perspective. So I can't say that I have a lot that I could recommend, but the key thing in terms of learning how to be better at sales is to really go in there with a genuine desire to help and to see what you have as a solution to a problem. And that's a big shift to make as well, because a lot of times we go in to sales conversations thinking, okay, I have a service and I need to sell it. And the shift is, I have a solution to a particular problem. I'm going in to see if they have this problem, because if they do, what I have might actually help them out tremendously. So it's a real shift in terms of how you see the sales conversation happening. It's not you going in there to pitch your thing, you going in there to sell your thing, you going in there to talk about a service, a tool, all these different things. Nobody wants any of that. What people want is a solution to their problem, and your opportunity is to see if your solution is a match for the problem that you're having. It's a beautiful situation you guys have where you already know if the problem exists. You could go online and see what their reputation looks like online, or if they have an online presence. So you're already going in armed with the knowledge that a problem exists, or an opportunity at the very least exists. And so now your opportunity is to see if your solution, right? And to not see, I know what you're selling is a tool and an online solution, but ditch that description and really see it as, I'm going in to see if the solution that I have matches the problem that I saw that they have. They may or may not even know that they have it, but you're going in to fix a problem, not to sell a service, not to sell a tool.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I do whenever I am first communicating with these decision makers is I ask specific questions that sort of cause that person to admit there's a problem there on their own. I don't actually tell them there's a problem necessarily or anything like that. I ask questions that get them thinking about this situation so that they actually kind of have to admit there's a problem and are therefore open to hearing the solution and sometimes even ask me what the solution is, which is ideal. I know that's something that you're really great about is you talk about the problems and you're really big on getting them to even come to you and start begging you for the solution, which is I think is really, really awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share what I have been doing. A lot of you know, I've done a lot of the mailing and email blasts and stuff like that, and I've had my success doing that. And so I've also got in there, and I've been doing some walk-ins again and stuff like that. And so I want to share those strategies and techniques that I got, and I would love to hear Allison's take and opinions on it, and then we'll get into some more stuff at the end. So the first thing that I do, I hear a lot of you guys are saying that you want to do stuff locally and you want to approach businesses. And so initially, one of my problems that I had with doing that is when you're walking into a business and you're going in there to talk about these problems, is you never know one, whether or not the business owner is going to be there are the decision makers going to be there? Two, if they are, sometimes you get anchored into that front desk where there's customers around you. And when I was early into this, I had some ideal situations where the owner happened to be there and he was interested. And then he went and he tried to talk to me in front of a restaurant full of customers surrounding us. And so I'm sitting here trying to explain to him how customers are talking bad about him online, and it got he was really defensive. I could tell in his posture he was looking around, and it was a nightmare early on. And so I've since, over the years corrected some mistakes that I made, and I wanted to share that with you. So what I do currently is I'll pull up to a parking lot or a shopping center, and I'll Google the names of the business that I see in that parking or that shopping center. And when I find one that either has a lack of presence online or they have negative reviews online, I get the phone number and I'll call in. And the front desk will usually answer the phone. And so all I do with the front desk is I simply ask if the manager is in. And you'll get a couple different responses. Some they'll say, sure, hold on, and they will go ahead and pass you on to the manager. Some will say, I am the manager, which is great. You can go on to the next step. The other is that they can't, that the manager isn't there right now, and they would ask you, what you're calling for, or they will ask you, sure, the manager's here, but what is this in reference to? So this is the first little obstacle that you run into with these gatekeepers. What I do is personally, I kind of stay in an ambiguous state where I basically ask a simple question and say what I'm calling for, which is I want to talk to them about some negative, or if it's just, lack of presence, I want to talk to them about some reviews that are online. Typically, what I find is that there isn't any front desk that wants to handle that. That's not really their job, answering a question like why there's negative reviews online. So almost always they pass me on to the manager. And once I get to the manager, that's when I can kind of begin the first step of how I like to build a problem in their head and get them to admit that there's a problem. And I do it by asking some really simple questions. So the first thing that I do when the manager gets on the phones is I ask them and I say, "Hello, I was looking up your business. Let's say it's a pizza parlor. I was looking up pizza parlors in the area, and I found yours online. I was curious, what is your current process for responding to negative reviews online?" Now, when I ask him this, I'm not asking him a yes or no question. I'm not saying, do you have a process for responding to negative reviews online? He could just say yes or no. What I ask him is, what is your process? Which means he has to give me an answer. If they say we don't have one, that's gonna be a really uncomfortable situation because that means that they don't really have an answer for this problem that exists, which is responding to negative stuff that are online. And why am I calling right now? Am I calling because I have a question about it and he doesn't have a way to answer it? So you've already built this problem in his head. And a lot of times, what people do is they fumble through an answer. They will start going, "Oh, well, we usually when someone brings it to our attention, we try to get on there and help it, but oh, there's, people can just make multiple Google accounts and they can make multiple stuff and leave negative reviews, and they just get really uncomfortable trying to answer this question because they don't have a solution." So that's great for me because now, without any pitching, without any sales, without me going around parading what we do, I have this person who is a little bit emotional, he's uncomfortable, and he's admitting that there's a problem and he's trying his best to solve it. He doesn't really have a good answer for it. So once he does this, the very next thing that I do is I basically tell him and that it's time to kind of come clean, who I am and why I'm calling. And what I want to do is I want to first sympathize with him with this problem, reveal who I am, show that there is a way out of this uncomfortable situation, that there is a solution, and then ask if there's a way for me to meet him in person and drop off some literature. So usually my conversation goes something like, "Hey, I totally understand," and I'll reiterate whatever the problem is he said. And then I'll go into that. The reason I actually called you is I'm not actually calling as a customer, but I did find you the same way all of your customers are finding you, which is looking you up online. It's pretty common for this to happen, and it's not because you do a bad job running your business or anything. It's simply because the review system itself is unbalanced. It's more likely to acquire negative reviews than positive reviews. We work with a lot of people in your industry, and I wanted to know if I could drop off some literature for you and quickly explain how we solve this problem. I won't take up much of your time. I'll be quick to explain it, and really quickly you'll be able to find out this is a solution for you. Do you mind if I come in and drop off that literature? And the reason I've done that is, number one, is I don't want these guys to think I'm going to take up a lot of their time because these guys are busy and my call was unexpected. Number two, I don't want to get these guys on the defensive. I don't want to call and say, "You guys are doing terrible, there's bad reviews," and just start badgering these guys, because the human instinct that I find is that people get defensive and they'll start justifying it. They won't want to hear your solution because they'll want to give you an answer for that problem that you're accusing them of. So I sympathize and let them know hey, it's not your business that's the problem. What the problem is, the review system is unbalanced. And I have a good solution for solving that problem of helping to get your positive customers to leave reviews. So I explain that in a real quick way, and almost always I get the manager to say, "Yeah, sure, come on in." Sometimes they'll ask me some questions right there on the spot, but a lot of times they just tell me that I can come in. And this is great for me because when I walk in, I can instantly tell the front desk person, "Hey, I have a meeting with so and so." They'll go get them, and then I'll either be brought to a back room because they kind of know what the topic of the conversation is going to be, or I can ask them to take me somewhere private. There's been quite a few times, like I said in the beginning, where I'm talking to them. It may even be an empty business. I was at a pizza place once where it was empty. I'm talking to the manager at the front desk. We were kind of anchored there, and everything's going smooth. And then a customer walks in, and it got really awkward when I'm sitting there trying to explain to him why he needs us. So this opening that I kind of created to talk to the manager and to get to the manager and kind of set everything up has been really successful for me getting into the back office and then talking to them, and we're both on the same page. He knows there's a problem, he's already admitted it, so he's really open to the solution and starts really asking me, "What is the solution? How do you solve that problem? What are you doing to make sure that these negative reviews aren't going live?" And that's really kind of the first step. And something I really like about Allison's approach is getting finding the problem, getting them to acknowledge there's a problem so that they come and ask you for the solution. So I've talked to Allison before about this. I would love for Allison to go in depth a little bit more about the strategy of this and what her strategy is whenever she's in there talking to people and different decision makers.
I love what you shared, particularly since the temptation is great because you are armed with the knowledge, right? Because your salespeople are going online and they're seeing these negative reviews, so they already know that the problem exists. And the temptation is there because you have this awareness that the problem exists. The temptation is great for going in and saying, "I know you already have this problem, and I'm here to help you solve it." And what's really great about what you did is, even though you are armed with the awareness that the problem exists because you saw it online, you didn't even mention that in the conversation. You really stayed in the place of inquiry and becoming inquisitive and asking questions. And I think that's a really key point for your salespeople, because even though you have the information that somebody's bashing them online or you saw negative reviews and all that, you don't have to bring any of that into the conversation, because it leaves the conversation way more open for them to be as curious as you are being curious. So I love the way that you open the conversation. It's really, do you have a process, or what process do you have? That's a really key distinction there too, because if you said, do you have a process? If they didn't have one, they'd feel defensive and go, well, yes, I have one,
Yes,
So I
exactly.
think the key thing that you did there is, what is your process, which is an open-ended question, not a yes, no question. And for a lot of the inquiry and the questioning in the sales process, it's always open-ended, and it's really important to stay away from that yes no, because yes no ends the conversation. Once they give you the answer, it's like you have nowhere to go. It's either yes or no. But
Absolutely.
when the questions begin with, what are your processes, what are some ways, in what ways have you done this, and it's very open-ended, then it creates a lot of rich conversation versus yes no questions. So that's really great in the inquiry part, where you're diagnosing the problem. And what goes on when you, once you get in the door and they're open to having that conversation with you, your opportunity then is to become, it's kind of like going into a doctor's office, where if you walk in and the doctor sees you there, well, obviously you have a problem. You would not have made an appointment if you didn't have a problem. But the doctor doesn't instantly start talking about the prescription he's going to give you. He talks a lot to you about, how long have you had this problem? How did this problem emerge? Does it hurt when I press here? And he asks all these questions and begins an examination and then writes the prescription once he understands the problem fully. And that's your role as a business owner and as a salesperson going in there, is to diagnose the problem. It's like this dual process where you're not making any judgments and you're allowing them to share what their experience is around the problem. So most of the conversation that you have with them is all around diagnosing the issue, and the diagnosis of the issue emerges from the questions that you ask, not from you stating that a problem exists. So it's really great to come up with a set of questions that you can ask, and uh, and and what you shared here really were great questions, and to have a rich set of questions, open-ended, that allows the prospect to be engaged in a non-threatening conversation with you. Because the question is open-ended and it isn't pointed, you're not saying, I think you have a problem, have you checked online, I saw your thing online, they're talking about you. The minute you step into the role of becoming the accuser, they will shut you down and send you send you packing. But
Absolutely.
if you truly come in there with a genuine desire to help, like, what processes do you have, and how do you handle this when this happens, and what if there are comments online, what do you typically do, what are some of the steps that you take, and all of those are open-ended questions that creates a rich conversation. And because you're having this genuine, authentic conversation, the diagnosis emerges and the experiences emerge, and there's nothing threatening in the conversation. And I love that it's important too to have that conversation in a safe place. And
Absolutely.
I love that you've already mentioned that, if it's a pizza shop and they're sitting at one of the, one of the pizza, where people typically eat pizza, where their customers are, then you can't have that open conversation. It's kind of like going back to that analogy of the doctor's office. If you go into the doctor's office and there are 5 other patients right there with you, and the doctor's asking you these probing questions, you're going to be looking around going, well, I don't want to answer how long have I had these symptoms, when all these people are looking, right?
I don't
And
have
that's
any
kind of the
symptoms. I'm
situation you
fine.
have when they're talking in that open environment. So it's really important. I totally agree, to find a safe place to have the conversation and not be roped into having the conversation right there in the open. But
Absolutely.
that diagnosis step is really, really key. And a lot of what I see salespeople doing, or business owners doing, is that they're going straight for, I have the solution, because they do, right? I mean, when you go into a doctor's office, he can write you a million different prescriptions. He has the solution to just about anything you could come in there with, but he or she still takes the time to ask enough questions to make sure that the solution truly is appropriate. The other key thing to remember is, even though you see bad reviews online and your tool can potentially help, doesn't mean the business owner is even interested.
Yes.
You know, this business owner that you're talking to may be somebody who isn't interested in the tool. And you have to be prepared for that kind of conversation as well. Not everybody that you talk to, even though they have bad reviews online, not everybody that has bad reviews online cares to fix the problem, right? And this is where the diagnosis comes in, because the open conversation allows you to see their level of openness to finding a solution. And they will either become inquisitive about your solution because they do not have a process, or they'll be like, you know, kind of nonchalant, no, I don't really care. And it doesn't serve you or them to push the solution on them. If you don't sense that level of openness and inquisitiveness to, yeah, well, how do you solve that problem? Then you can't proceed. They have to create that openness along with you. And if that openness isn't there, pushing doesn't create any more openness, right? It creates more tension and more discomfort. So you have to be willing to be done with the conversation if the person doesn't care to solve the problem, and you have to be sensitive to that. But it's important to make sure that you are not creating their closeness to a solution, because if you go in there with an accusation, I saw this online, I saw that online, you don't have you don't have a process, clearly you need me, and you go in with all of that, then you actually create their closed approach. So but if you go in there, just as you said, when you go in there with that openness, then they become equally as open. So if your questions are open-ended, not accusatory, they become more open in what they're sharing with you. And that dual openness creates their genuine desire for, well, what do you have? You know, you're not coming in here kind of pouncing on me, telling me you have something to sell. You really are trying to see if I want this, and I could sense that you're not pushing anything on me. So now I'm becoming even more curious because you're not pushing. And that's a key thing to remember in the quality of conversation that you're having with people as well.
Absolutely. And I noticed that, in the initial conversation, when you're getting them to feel that uneasiness, when you're on the phone and you're wanting to get in there and get that problem to be established so that they're open to at least letting you come in there and talk about it. Then when you actually get in there and you're sitting down with them, I've already convinced them in their head that there's a problem, but that I'm not accusing, and that I'm kind of switching roles after that. I get really into a mode of qualifying them, because our tool is not really targeted to just fixing online. Anybody who's gone in here and looked at our stuff knows that there's a wide range of stuff we can do, whether it's marketing, whether it's customer communication tools. So you want to make sure that when you're talking to this guy, you're selling him on the right thing, that you're solving the right problem. You may be focusing so much on telling him about how great it is to fix online reviews, and this guy may not care a lick about it. But because you didn't ask the right questions, you could have found out with the right qualifying questions that he was really interested in the customer communication part of things. So when I go in there and I sit down with the person, I know it's human nature for people to be sort of selfish a little bit, in their needs. Okay, they're not really caring about what your business wants and how to help your business. They want to know how to help their business. So you need to go in there with that mindset, and you need to find out what their problems are, what they think their problems are, what goals they have, and really do a lot of the first half of that conversation qualifying them and asking questions. I kind of uh, consider it the same way as kind of like building an arsenal of weapons on how I'm going to use to close them towards the end. Is I'm finding out all these different things about them. Oh, he's having a lot of difficulty in communicating with his customer. Oh, he really had this really bad review that popped up a year ago, and he had no idea for an entire year that it was there. How many customers could that potentially turn off? So I'm listening to them, I'm asking them questions, and people like to talk about themselves, so they love talking. They feel like there's rapport being built as they're talking and stuff like that. And so I spend, like I said, that entire first half asking about them, not telling them about me, not telling them about what we do. I ask questions. Once I find out all the answers that I want, once I find out all the problems that he's telling me exist and all the goals that he has, That's where I come in there and I start giving the appropriate solutions so that I'm not wasting a pitch on trying to push something that this guy's not even interested in.
That's excellent because the what's really beautiful about the process of having a diagnosis being part of the sales conversation is that whatever emerges as problems and sticking points and things that they have not yet resolved is precisely what you need to present to them. So it actually makes your job as a salesperson 10 times easier because they've given you everything you need to respond to. Because when you talk about the solution that you're providing, it's in direct response to what you have uncovered. It's kind of like that physician analogy I used earlier. Your physician is writing your prescription in direct proportion to what you just shared that you're having, right? So same in the sales conversation. If you didn't take enough time in the beginning to really have that full and complete diagnosis, which also very easily builds that rapport, because a lot of times salespeople try to build false rapport. How's the weather? How's business? And all these questions, and they can sense that you're trying to build false rapport. But true, authentic rapport happens as a side effect of you becoming so curious about what their experience is. They sense your authenticity. Your questions are not like, contrived. They're true, genuine questions, and you're having a genuine rapport
You have
because
interest in
they're
it.
answering your questions and you're having this genuine exchange of conversation, which it builds rapport as a side effect without you even intending to build that rapport. And it builds trust as well, because that genuine authentic conversation doesn't sound like a sales pitch, because it isn't. You're really genuinely going in there asking, what's your experience with this, what's your experience with that, what happens when you do this, what happens when you do that, how do you handle this, how do you handle that. And it's like you're an interviewer, right? You're like a news reporter, just asking a bunch of questions about their experience in this particular area or in other areas that they may be having as well. So that genuine rapport that you're building without even intending, your curiosity builds that real genuine rapport, and the person sees you as a person, not as a salesperson. If somebody's here asking me about my experience with different things in this area of my business, and that genuine rapport creates a level of trust that other people will not be able to create if they're just coming in there to pitch. And the second thing that happens in that awesome rapport is that because that genuine rapport builds genuine trust, they're more open in sharing with you what the key challenges are. And because they're more open in sharing with you what the key challenges are, you now have everything you need to share with them the solution that you provide. Because a pitch is usually canned and predefined, right? So if you came in there with a pitch about this particular tool or product, you already know what you're going to say before you even have the conversation. But by contrast, if you are having a genuine rapport, a genuine conversation, a little Q&A, right? You're the reporter trying to find out, what is your experience with this or that or the other thing, and you have this genuine rapport being built, then what you say is not a pitch. It's a genuine response to what you have just heard in the initial part of the conversation. And I think that's what makes your offer even more powerful, because you've taken the time to hear what the true challenges are, and they're sensing that you have a genuine desire to help, and that creates a tremendous amount of power in the segment of the conversation where you're presenting your offer.
Yeah, you're wanting to help. You're not accusing them. And if you're wanting to help and you're asking these questions to show that you want to help, they're not going to be defensive. They're not going to be afraid to share with you. If you're in there accusing them, why are they going to give you any more things for you to accuse them and to make them feel worse about the job that they're doing? When you're asking these questions to help, then they're going to find you as a source of a solution, and they're going to want to share all the problems they have and want to confide in you to hear what these solutions are. Another thing that I like about this is, a lot of these people that we're talking to today, they have that fear of going in and talking to people, and so that's a big difficult obstacle that they have to overcome is that intimidation factor. One of the great things, and I used to do this when I sold phones and I was training sales reps, is asking questions that not only is great for the sales process, it's great for you too. When you're in there asking questions, you can have specific questions you know to ask, but it relieves the pressure. Why? Because now they're going to do a lot of the talking. They're going to be the presentation side of things is not present when you're asking questions. You're not going in there with this big presentation trying to remember everything that you got to say, which is where a lot of people's fear come in, this public speaking, this having to remember these long speeches. When you go in there and the first half of it is asking questions, these questions are usually short questions, and it's going to get you comfortable with that person just as much as it's going to get that person comfortable with you. They're going to be able to start talking to you, and it's going to switch from this sales process to this conversation between two people, and it's going to be a lot easier then for you to adapt to this and get used to this process and remove the fear from it, because you're going to get so used to going there, just asking some questions, getting to know this guy. And then after that awkwardness of that first meeting is passed, you're now into this comfortable zone where you can just flow, build rapport, talk about the business and or anything else like that, and really get comfortable with these people. And that's when you start closing deals.
That's really powerful because the entire process is interesting, and I think this is where people switch from fear of sales to like, oh, this is just talking to people, and it does relieve a lot of tension on the part of the salesperson because their goal is not to deliver a pitch. Most of the conversation is you diagnosing the problems and the challenges that they're experiencing. So if you switch your role to more like that of a news reporter, like I'm going to walk into this business and I'm just going to interview this guy or this woman or this business owner on what key challenges they're having in this area. I'm genuinely curious to see if any of the things that come up might actually match some of the cool stuff that I have, right? And that experience is entirely different than, oh dear God, I got to go in and make this pitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's entirely different. And I think you can make your role much more fun. Like when I have conversations with prospects, it's fun for me. It's like, wow, I wonder what they're going to bring up in the conversation. I don't even know. It's like this surprise of cool stuff and great conversation that we're going to have together. And the minute you start seeing it that way, it relieves all of that tension and that, oh my God, I got to make the pitch, It's like, let it go. The pitch comes as a natural outcome of you responding to the challenges that they put on the table.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I do too is I like really being polite and happy and in a great mood, and not just seeing them as a target, and not just totally passing over the front desk person or anything like that. I usually go in there and talk to the front desk person a little bit and become friendly with them. Sometimes you're not going to close this on your first deal. And there's actually a doctor that I have where I had such a good rapport with the front desk lady. We got into this conversation about coffee of all things, and I was telling her about this bulletproof coffee that I drink, and I went into this big old thing about it. And she actually ended up helping me getting in there and talking to a doctor once, because I came back there like I promised to bring her this sample of the bulletproof coffee. And so going in there with this attitude of not treating these people as a sale and treating like people and friends, you would be surprised at how well that will work for you. Like I said, this front desk lady is actually the one that ended up getting me the meeting with the doctor, and it was because I took the time to treat her like a person and to say hi and to treat everybody in the whole establishment like that. You want to go in there with a really good attitude and smiling and be friendly to everybody, because that has a psychological effect on the whole place. They want you back. They're going to enjoy doing business with you, and you're going to enjoy doing business with them. I remember you telling me that in one of our last conversations, that part of the time when you're qualifying them, you're wanting to know if they're going to be a good fit for you too. You're going to be dealing with them a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that key point that you just made is really good. It's if you have a gatekeeper or some person who is the person who opens the gate to the person you really need to talk to, a lot of times we see them as, I got to get past that person. How do I get past that person? And instead, what you shift in your head is, okay, these are all people that are part of the process. And instead of how do I get past that person, what you ask yourself is, how do I partner with that person so that we can both together help the business owner to create even more success? So see them as a partner in the process rather than somebody that you get past. That's a person that you build rapport with. That's a person you connect with so that you could both together help the business owner to see this opportunity of helping to grow their business. So I totally see that.
Yeah, you were actually one of the ones who actually turned me on to doing that in my email blast. That last conversation I had with you really got me thinking about that because I was one of the people initially who would see front desk people like that. They were my obstacle in a lot of times, and I would be really great once I got in there with the owner, but the front desk was always a problem with me. And when I had that last interview with you, I really switched some thinking, and it had a huge impact on getting these guys to help. One of the things that I did, and what's really cool about our business structure, is that we have sales agents who can come on, and they don't. It doesn't cost any money, and we allow these sales agents to make $100 per business they sign up, and then they get 30%, 20 to 30% residuals. So one of the things that I've done with some of the gatekeepers, if I wasn't able to get past them, as we say, I kind of bring them on board and I get them to help me. I tell them that I think that their customer service has been awesome. So when I'm doing these kind of qualifying questions and stuff like that, I said, man, your customer service is awesome. It seems like there's not a lack of willingness to respond to these negative reviews. There just seems to be a lack of tools. And what I would like to do is offer you this deal that we have going on where we'll give you $100 for referring us and get us in there, but also we will give you 20% of whatever the package is and allow you to be the one responsible. Since you've done such a great job answering these questions, we'll give you the 20% that we will be charging the business in order to manage this process. And what happens is the business gets an added benefit where they don't have to pay someone to monitor everything. They don't have to pay somebody to or try to encourage them or build their own internal pay structure or incentives. We actually handle that for them, and we do it simply. It's kind of just a trick, really. But we simply just make them a sales agent and make their own doctor's office their first customer. So it's really cool. And what I had front desk people who were being really short with me go completely out of their way to bring the owners in because now they felt important. I was telling them how well they handled me and how well they handled their customers. I was telling them what a great job that they did with what they had to work with. And if they only had the tools, imagine what they could do. And you just wouldn't believe the turnaround and the response that these front desk people would be. They were, like you said, became my partner, and they were the ones going in there and talking to the businesses and presenting things and really making sure that I got in there and got into a conversation with the decision maker. And that was something
Mm,
really big that you taught me, and I thought that was awesome.
powerful. Very cool.
So, one of the next things I wanted to ask you is, what do you think are some common traps that salespeople might fall into during a pitch? Is there anything that you've noticed in your experience that salespeople maybe instinctively do, or any problems they might come across when trying to present this to a decision maker?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that I see is that what we do now, we had some conversation already about really diagnosing the problem and asking enough questions to understand what their challenges, problems, and key things are. And as you know, when that emerges, what happens for the salesperson is to go, cool, they've admitted the problem. I understand that there's a problem. We both agree there's a problem. We both agree that there's supposed to be a solution. And then you go straight to talking about the solution, right? Like, I sell this, right? I sell this tool, I sell this strategy, I sell this process, whatever it is that you're selling. And the piece that's missing in the middle is articulating the value of the thing that you sell without even talking about the thing that you sell. Okay. And this is a really key distinction that I don't hear getting talked about a lot in sales processes. But let me repeat that. Typically, You go in, you talk about the issues, and you're doing really great. You have building this great rapport because they're learning to trust you, and you're being really down to earth. You're not trying to be a salesy person. You're having this conversation with them. You're interviewing them on, the key challenges. All going great. And then they start to become inquisitive about the thing that you sell. Your temptation at that point is to go, oh yeah, great. So here's the thing that I sell. And you start going into the pitch at that point. How much is it? What's the tool, how they can use the tool. And there's a missed opportunity there that's so profound. And the missed opportunity is to talk about the power and the value of the tool before you even talk about the tool. So you have just done a really great job hearing all of the key challenges that they're experiencing, right? You asked really great questions. You heard all about the key things. Before you say, oh, and here's the tool that we use, you have an opportunity to address the challenge. Okay, so that may sound something like, well, Colby, tell me a couple of things that you might actually hear so I can be more specific in what the power and the value would sound like.
So, when you mean something I might hear, like at what stage? Whenever.
Like, what are the challenges that they would
Okay.
express to you
So
in that discovery piece where you're
so the
really
challenge.
asking about the challenges and the key problems?
So the challenges that they have, number one, is there's up to 44 locations that, basic 44 locations that a negative review can go live. So imagine being a business owner and there's 44 places that a customer can go leave a review. And no Yelp, City Search Insider pages, none of these places politely send you a notification letting you know, hey, by the way, a customer is bad mouthing you over here, right? So in order to know about a negative review that goes live, you have to comb the internet constantly, searching for your business, looking for your business in all these various places just to find out if anyone said anything bad so that you can stay on top of it and respond to them. A lot of these guys truly don't want to have, negative experiences with customers to go unresponded to. They just don't know that it's happening. And so that's one of the challenges that we have, is that they can't keep track of all the places that customers can potentially become critics of their business. And so that's a big.
Okay. Okay, so I heard two things. So one is that they're unaware, and the second challenge is even if they are aware, there's so many places to look, they don't have the time. They're busy running their business, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So say you're in a sales conversation and you just heard that, right? The business owner is aware of the problem. They're like, I know there's like 40-something places that they're probably posting this review. I don't have time to go look at this. In fact, I didn't even know it was there, and somebody came in and told me it was there for about a year. Oh, you're hearing the story, right, around the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Your temptation then is to go, cool, we have the perfect tool that solves that problem. And here, let me tell you all about the features of the tool, right? And it sounds like, well, that's where I would go. They already told me they have a problem.
I'm excited
because
because
there's
I've
an
done
opportunity
that.
in the middle there to speak to the pain and respond with the power and the value of the tool without even talking about the tool. And that would sound something like, so John, I heard you, it's great that you're aware that this issue exists, and I know it's a terrible challenge to, not even know that the bad reviews out there, and even if you did know, there's like 40 different places you have to check, and you're busy running your business all day long. So what I want to assure you is the solution that we have, you don't even have to think about whether that bad review is out there. It will come to you. It will notify you. Not only that, you no longer have to worry about combing the internet, trying to figure out where all these, where this bad review ended up. You no longer have to worry about that, because here's what will happen instead. And you describe the experience that they would have instead. Notice you could describe all of that without ever talking about the tool. You can say, instead of you worrying about whether a bad review is out there, that bad review will actually show up in your inbox the minute it gets posted. And I don't know if that's how the tool works, but I'm just assuming.
Yeah.
But you could say that. And you could say, instead of worrying, trying to figure out when you'll have the time to go through all those 40 different sites, here's what your experience will be instead. So what you're sharing with them in the middle there, between hearing the pain and the problem and talking about the tool, you have an opportunity to share with them what their experience would be like if they had the tool. Then you talk about the tool. But when you talk about the experience that they would have when they have the tool, all of a sudden, when they hear that different experience, they will naturally go, whoa, whoa, what's the tool that, like, how do I do that? What is it that you have that makes that happen? They will naturally ask you for the tool. And you can go right into describing the offer that you have. So I just wanted to raise your awareness that there is an opportunity in the middle of hearing the problem and talking about your offer to talk about the experience that they would have that's different than the challenge that they're experiencing now. It's the opposite of the challenge that they're experiencing now. And your ability to articulate the power and the value of the tool in that middle piece is what authentically inspires hunger and desire for the solution. And it makes it way easier to move to them saying yes to the tool that you actually have.
I think that's awesome, and that is actually something that I've done, and maybe probably don't even realize that I was doing it. But a lot of times that I've found that I've had success with doing is giving them real world scenarios and situations of how the tool works, so that they can really put themselves in a position to see it working for them. If you just say this is what the tool does, they may not really connect the dots, and they may not really have enough time during this conversation to really see how it could be applied. But if you give them a specific situation that this particular tool would work for them, I've noticed that it's had a greater impact. And I guess that's pretty much kind of like in the lines of what you're saying, is because you're giving them an experience, whether it's an imagined one or something like that. You're connecting a value to it because they're able to see how it applies to their business. And I found that that's been really, really strong for me by showing them actual scenarios where this tool would work. For example,
Yeah,
like,
and it's even more powerful, Colby, if the examples that you're sharing is a perfect match for the challenge that they just shared with you. So
absolutely.
it sounds like you're really solving their problem, if indeed you had the opportunity to ask enough powerful questions for that to emerge. Sharing the stories about what other people do is powerful as well, definitely powerful as well. But man, if you talk to specifically what they just told you and talked about how they could use the tool to completely change that experience, it is 10 times more powerful.
Yeah, that like for example, we had a hotel where during the qualifying stages we were talking to them, and they had an experience where a customer had come in, someone else had set up an appointment or a reservation for them, and then the front desk was not able to give them the room. They needed some additional steps that were needed, and the manager, who is the only person who was able to approve this, wasn't on the location. And so what happened is they asked this person who is cranky and tired from traveling. The last thing they want to deal with is not being able to get this room that's already paid for. They ask her to scoot over, and they start talking to this. And so there was this giant problem that happened. And what was funny about this was whenever I was doing the emails, the way I found out about this problem was the manager offered me a discount and a 50% off my stay, and was really apologetic about everything because he thought I was the customer in question. And and the worst part about it was he accidentally forwarded, when he was responding to me, all the conversation that happened between the front desk and the manager. So the front desk was somewhat nasty about describing the experience to the manager, and then the manager forwarded all this to me. So when this came to me, I was able to talk to the hotel, and I was able to explain what just happened. Hey, I'm not an actual customer, and thank God, because of what the front desk was saying. But I was able to explain to them what we did and how we solved this customer communication problem. There's a thing that we have which is direct to manager, and it allows you to a customer to send a message to a specific phone number, and then the different managers, however you want to set up, will be notified that a customer is trying to communicate with them. So even if you're off at home or whatever, the manager can respond to them. So that manager had the power to solve that problem. And because they didn't have a tool, that customer got frustrated and went and found a different place to vent this. They went on to Yelp and vented this really horrible, nasty thing. And it's not because of a lack of want from the manager to solve that problem. It was because of a lack of a tool. He didn't know that customer was upset. He wasn't there to fix the problem. Had he been there, had he been notified, he could have quickly responded to that customer right then, offered them a 50% discount, and if anything, that customer would have been satisfied, so much so they might have actually went and wrote a positive review about them. So when I started talking to them and I shared that experience and how it could have potentially turned out in a different way, he was instantly drawn in and more responsive and more open to hearing this, because I showed him right there the solution and the different experience he could have had he been using our tool. And that's when he started asking us more about our product, once I was able to show him a real world situation that could have solved the problem that existed. So I think that's really powerful. It's really awesome.
Powerful.
All right, so we do have some questions starting to roll in. I don't want to get too deep before I ask this, because some of these were coming in a little bit earlier. I do want to say a lot of people are saying great stuff and they're really appreciating you being on here. One question I got from D Miller, she is asking. She says, "I have always been friendly to people on the phone, long before I started using the phone for sales. Am I broadcasting something?" Allison?
Oh, I didn't hear that. Can
Oh,
you
okay,
repeat it?
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, she says, "I have always been friendly to people on the phone, long before I started using the phone for sales. Am I broadcasting something?"
I don't know. I don't know if I understand the question. What does she mean then? Am I broadcasting
Uh, uh, um,
something?
yeah. D, would you like to clarify that a little bit more? They're needing to type this, so give us a couple seconds. I'm not sure if she means
Hmm.
like maybe is she broadcasting a certain attitude or something like that that maybe they're picking up on. Could you clarify that question for us, D? And while we're waiting, okay, here he goes. She goes, "Am I broadcasting? Here I am. I'm a salesman." So she's asking, she's always really, really extremely friendly on the phone. Do you think that's broadcasting that, hey, here I am, I'm a salesman, just because she's being friendly?
That's a great question because it certainly can come across that way. Sometimes when you guys know, like if a salesperson calls you up on the phone, they tend to be overly friendly,
Yeah.
and you pick up like your sales radar is going up. They're like, they're really friendly. Like, how's the weather in Georgia today? Like, and they have all that super hype going on, and you smell a sale coming, and you're like, I don't want to talk to this person. I don't want to talk to this person. So in a sense, you may need to tone it down just a bit if you're really a high people. Like, I am a really hyped up kind of person. I'm just naturally like, gung ho. That's just my natural personality. So if I were doing a cold call, which I rarely ever do, but if I'm doing a cold call, I have to dial it down a little bit because my natural, high energy voice can be misinterpreted as, "Ooh, I got you. Now I'm going to rope you into a sales pitch." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you may need to dial it down a bit and sound more like somebody who's curious about whether they have a particular problem versus, "Hey, I'm here to like make your day." Because if you come across like that, it smells like the typical cold caller, the typical salesperson, and their natural instinct is to go, "How quickly can I get them off the phone?"
And this is kind of the reason too that I come in very ambiguous in the beginning. I want to make it clear that when I say ambiguous, I don't ever want you to be dishonest. But when I say ambiguous, when I first talk to someone on the phone and I'm asking inquisitive questions, I ask the questions that could be a question a customer would ask or a salesperson would ask. They're never going to, once I reveal who I am by the questions kind of changing a little bit and being more inquisitive and stuff like that. There isn't anything where they go, "Oh, well, if you didn't tell me you were a salesman, no, you did something sneaky." I've never had that happen. But when I call and I say, "Hey, is the manager there?" and I'm being just friendly, or hey, I got a problem I was wondering if you can help me with. I need to talk to the manager about something. Can you help me figure out who the right person to talk to is? A lot of times they'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure. What is the problem? What can I help you out with?" And they kind of start getting on your team. You're being naturally friendly, but you're asking a question in a way where they're not really sure if you're a customer. It doesn't really sound like you're a salesperson, so they don't have their walls up. You're just asking a question, and that's all that you're doing. And as
Hmm.
long as you ask the question that doesn't give too much away, like, "Hey, I just want to ask about reviews that are online." There's no real reason to be rude. There's no real reason to probe deeper and ask more questions. Well, why do you want to know about these reviews? You don't really get that kind of thing. What you get is a real helpful attitude, because a customer service representative is supposed to be nice to customers, and so they're not really sure who you are, why you're calling, so they will tend to be just as nice as you are. So I say just be pretty average, just be in a good mood, be friendly to them, don't be rude, and just ask the questions that are going to get you the right responses. You do this enough, and you get out there and try, you will have and kind of whittle down your questions to fit your personality. I have some questions tailored that I kind of send out, some templates, but you're always going to take the things that I give you, and you're going to add your own spin to it, your own personality to it. So just be natural, and ask the right questions to get to the right solutions that you're trying to get. So D said, "Oh, great, great, thanks." She had another question too, and D, I'd like you to clarify this one a little bit more. I'll go ahead and read it. It says, "I truly feel that way. I know that I have some things that will really help your business. I'm not trying to make a sale, and I am totally not attached to the outcome. And I still don't get through to people. What do I need to change or add?"
Is she, so I'm wondering if she's saying, I know that I have some things, like, is this some, are these things that you're saying? Or,
Is it something that
I,
you feel, or is it something that you're saying? You got to give the time to type here.
mhm.
And so, just to reiterate, while we're giving you a chance, so when you ask this question and you're saying that you truly feel this way, and you know that you have some things that will really help the business, and that you're not trying to make a sale, and you're not attached to the outcome, is these things that you are feeling inside, or is this coming across in the conversation? Um, where are you having your trouble at? Or even if you want to share with us some actual objections that you weren't able to overcome, feel free to share
Mhm.
those as well.
Yeah, or what she's saying when she's connecting with people.
Absolutely. So you said, yes, it's a feeling inside. Guess I'm just nervous and not coming across that way, as I guess. So she has these feelings inside, and she knows this is how she should be, but as she starts talking, I think the nervousness overcomes her, and so she's
Mm.
thinking that's coming across. And I think that's very true. People are a lot more perceptive, and to I would not say unrealness, but they're a lot more perceptive to what the actual emotion is behind a person. So if you're nervous, yeah, sometimes that can be picked up, even if it's on a subconscious level. Especially women. Women are really
Yeah.
intuitive about stuff like this, and so lack of eye contact, and the way you're asking questions and stuff like that. Yeah, it can come across, but that's why we say it's so important for you to get out there and get comfortable with the being nervous. I don't think there's ever a time that you don't feel somewhat nervous a little bit about certain things. And this happens in all areas of life. Some of you know I've done jujitsu for about 7 years, and I've been competing in other martial arts since I was 5. There has never been, and all the competitions I've ever won and gone to, where I didn't feel nervous before the competition started. It isn't until I actually started the competition, once the fight began or whatever it was, that all the nervousness left. And sales, for me personally, has been the same way. Walking up to the building, walking into the place, there is that nervousness that kind of happens a little bit. But because I've had my successes in the field, and I know that everything's going to be okay, and I kind of tell myself that this is the same thing I do all the thing. We're just going in to have a conversation, and that kind of self-talk that I have before I go in there makes it so that once the conversation stops, that nervousness disappears. And it's only going to happen if you go out there and you start trying this and you get comfortable with the fact that that nervousness is natural and it's something that happens beforehand, but it will dissipate and disappear once you actually start having the conversations. And again, knowing that the first half of this is only going to be you asking questions and getting to know them, it should alleviate some of that pressure of needing to present this in the right way and making sure you cover everything, because the first half of the conversation is you asking very simple questions and letting them do all the talking.
Yeah, you're just genuinely curious. And I agree with you, Colby, that you might feel nervous the first time, the second time, the third time, and then the fourth time's like, I know what this is about now. Right? And you just get more and more comfortable with it. When I started out doing sales, and most of my sales happened over the phone and still does, but one of the things that I had to do, I literally sat down and wrote up something to myself that I said to myself before every sales conversation I had. It's like mental shifting prep, right? I called it my pre-sales meditation because I had to calm myself down, chill out, and switch my head to be in the place where I really am there to be a person of service, and I'm not there to pitch. And I'd be happy to send that to you, by the way. Just send me an email, info@greatsmallbusinessadvice.com. I'll send you the little prep thing I used to do before every sales conversation. But what it did for
Awesome.
me, it allowed me to chill out. It's like this little mantra I said to myself before, and it allowed me to let go and just be myself in the conversation. It really calmed me down and got me in the place where that most of that nervousness dissipated, and I was ready to talk to people from a calm, place.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to have that. And I kind of I did something similar. I have two things that also help me, and I always would teach my sales reps this kind of stuff as well, especially when I was selling cell phones. When I'm on the phone, I have my safety blanket, I'll call it. I will always have this notepad open with the questions sitting there, even if I already know these by heart. The having these there of what questions I might want to ask or something like that, I know that if there's some kind of a brain fog that comes along or something like that, I can have that as a reference and I can quickly look down and look at that, and it just kind of gives me a little bit of a confidence knowing that's there. And when I'm going into businesses, the brochures that I bring in there would be something that I use for that. A brochure is really, really powerful that I found when doing sales in front of somebody, because I felt like you have something that you're walking in there with. And number two, if there's ever that moment of you not knowing what to say or you didn't have the right question or something like that, a lot of times I would default to this in the beginning whenever I was still learning. And I would default to that ability to know that anytime I needed to, I could switch the conversation, open the brochure up, and start talking about something. And the more you talk about these different things, when you open that brochure and you see something, it will trigger something in your brain that you should be talking about. And so I personally would have these, like I said, these little safety blankets, I would call it, until I got more comfortable with things. And I would suggest bringing stuff like that. Bring the brochures, or if you're doing phone calls, have the questions sitting there in front of you until you get comfortable, and just know that you always have that to fall back in. And again, worst case scenario, what happens? You end a conversation. That's really all that happens. You're not really, you're not losing money. You're not going to get made fun of, anything like that. You're just having a conversation. If it goes, a little sour or something happens, it's just a learning experience. That's all it is.
Yeah, I always say there's 6 billion people in the world. This one says no, there's plenty more to go.
Absolutely. And just a little thing that I did too, since I kind of brought it up. We used to do this a lot with when we worked in the malls and we had brochures. One of the most difficult things that I ever did in sales was selling cell phones in a mall. Most people walk by us and with their heads turned down, they start acting like they're texting on their phone. They really hate stopping by us because a lot of the guys would be really pushy and stuff like that. And so you had to get really creative to pull them over. And one of the things that we did was we would have a brochure, and you go to offer it to somebody, but you never actually give it to them. And what happens is you end up kind of anchoring them there. And so I've noticed that that's kind of worked for me a little bit too when I'm walking in there in some scenarios when I have that brochure. And if they kind of just, or if they say, hey, do you have a brochure? Do you have literature? Instead of just handing it over to them, there's been quite a few times that I opened up the brochure and said, yeah, sure, absolutely, open it up. And I would point to something that would start a conversation. And then I would use one of my, questions that would get them to admit that there's a problem that's going on. And then it opened up the conversation to do all the stuff that we have just been talking about. But if you're having that nervousness, like I said, having something that you can default to, even if it's just a mental thing, will usually help a lot to break down that nervousness, because you just have, like I said, like kind of like a fallback, something to kind of go in there with.
I agree.
All right, let's see. Do we have any more questions right now? I know that a lot of people are going to be hearing the recorded version of this. There's already people asking me if there's going to be a replay because they came in a little late. The answer is yes. There will be a replay. This is being recorded, so I will email this out to all of you guys. If you have any questions after this, feel free to still email them. If you have any questions that you want to ask Allison, she did give you the email. I'll go ahead and include this, her email, if she would like that, in the email where I send the recording out. If you have any questions specific to her, I'm sure she wouldn't mind answering it. Um, one th-
Sure.
one thing that I would like to give her the opportunity to do is to talk about her business a little bit. She is a great business coach and has some great opportunities too. So I know some of you might possibly be interested in that. So if there's anything that you got going on, any seminars or any coaching or anything like that
No
available.
seminars at the current time, but I'd be happy to, if anyone wants the 11 videos that I have online, feel free to go to getmoreclientsvideos.com. And a couple of the videos in there, maybe more than a couple, talking about the value of what you do and the sales process and all that. So feel free to grab that. It's totally free. 11 videos that I did earlier this year, actually. And again, that's at www.getmoreclientsvideos.com.
Awesome. All right. So what we'll do, just to wrap it up, I will send out an email with the recording, her email, and anybody who wants that mantra for you to calm down at the beginning. I know I'm gonna ask for that person. I'd be really interested in that. You can go ahead and ask for that, and if you have any questions, send it over. And if you want the DVD, she's willing to communicate with you about that. So I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate y'all coming in during the lunch break. Allison, as always, it's been a blast talking to you. I would love to have you back.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, guys. Goodbye.
Bye bye.